Appreciate you tuning in to Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show live on Facebook and on YouTube from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State. And once a month, we, if unless we have to do it more often as events warrant, we sit down with the county executive of Erie County, Brenton Davis, county executive. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you as well.
All right, let's kind of back up to last week. Again, Erie County under the magnifying glass, really across the state. We had some, and really around the world, we had some, trouble with our vendors at the election office here. Can you shine some light of what? Here's. Can I just ask you, why do we have to have certain pieces of paper and use certain printers in order to feed these machines? What's the deal with that?
So, those would be questions for the election board.
Okay.
So, as the county executive, I have nothing to do with the elections by virtue of the office. As a matter of fact, it's because the Board of Elections is comprised of the members that aren't running, and I'm a separate branch of government. So anything that falls under, the only thing I can do is try to provide assistance where appropriate. And, any of the comments that I make, a lot of it's just making the taxpayers aware of what their government is doing, and rightfully so.
Now, it seemed like they got a lot of help from the Department of State, from the state government. In fact, we heard from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, who called into the show, said, "Hey, if you're missing your mail-in and all this stuff." But
it was to the point where they had to hire a consultant, to have somebody sitting in the office. This election was terribly disorganized, and like I said, it's nothing against the staff of the election office. They have to follow their leadership,
right?
But at the end of the day, you had an elections chair that froze out several members of county council with applicable election experience and thought 4 Democrats should run this election on their own. I don't want to say a ton about this because there are open investigations and things that are going on right now behind the scenes.
Well, there were lawsuits, right?
Not only that. You really mess up when the Democrats and the Republicans of the state, both political parties, sign on to the same lawsuit.
Yeah.
Well, at least you're successful in one thing, and that was to get them both to agree that you're wrong.
Yeah. Talk about the election itself, because you over the past 2 years have really kind of built some strong bridges to the Biden administration, right? You think about Tom Perez coming to town here and so on.
To me, I think that's a testament. That's a lot of times that you see. That's the great big narrative that, these local Democrats, it's part of their agenda that they want to feed the people of Erie County. They want to paint this administration as like we don't work with anybody, or, we can't get along and do this, that, and the other. No. That's 100% false. I think we saw that I exceeded levels of my predecessor, who was a congresswoman.
Mm-hmm.
The attention that we got from the Biden administration and the White House over the last 3 years, we're going to have an even better relationship. I've already reached out. Matter of fact, one of my brothers in the Army Reserve was just appointed yesterday as the director of the EPA.
Oh, really?
Congressman Lee Zeldin.
I did not know you had a connection.
So he's a fellow Army Reserve officer, and he was actually a guiding light for me when I ran this last time, really drawing on different things, and to see that he's got a direct cabinet. So that's great to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody directly in the White House.
Might be helpful when it comes to things like Erie Coke.
Oh, that's exactly. We've already had that conversation.
Right.
So life, it's all about it's all about connections, and to me, I said this, there's folks that can be critical either way. Why would you go see Dr. Biden? Why would you go see anybody that comes? I can tell you, when former Executive Dahlkemper and Mayor Schember snubbed President Trump coming to Erie, even as a citizen, that rubbed me the wrong way, and I won't do that. I refuse to be that kind of leader. I don't care, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whoever holds an office. I will always make an audience for them. I will always be the person there to roll out the red carpet, extend the hand, and welcome them to our community. Because, at the end of the day, elections are one thing. But come the end of election, you accept the results, you close ranks, and you govern. Mm-hmm. And, I wasn't elected to be the county executive of just Republicans. I'm here to represent our entire community. and that's what these offices are truly about. So I mean, to me, that's not something that's ever under my administration is ever going to happen. No matter who the president is, we're going to have that relationship, because through those relationships, come those different opportunities, come the knowledge, come the funding, and the result of those relationships. I mean, that's how you move your community forward. That's what politics is really about, is getting something done for your community and moving the ball in the right direction. And if you don't have those relationships, or if you're closed-minded to the point where you're not willing to, I won't talk to that guy, and orange man bad, and all this other silliness. I mean, it's all rhetoric, at the end of the day. So I mean, we are going to have that relationships, and we would have. Had Harris had won, we'd have the same relationship. But I can tell you, I mean, it's a heck of a lot easier when it's not across party lines.
Right.
So, I mean, I was able to do it the hard way. Well, I really look forward to seeing what we can do with Erie County now that the pathway just got a heck of a lot easier.
Let's get a phone call here. Hi, you are live on Talk Erie with the County Executive, Brenton Davis.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Davis.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, I called, I think Joe can remember my call a little while back when I mentioned that same thing that you just referred to regarding Mr. Trump being snubbed by the powers to be here in Erie. And I just wanted to just make that mention. I agree with you 100% that an elected official should not snub the sitting president of the United States like they did to Mr. Trump. So, hey, thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks much. Bye. Well, I remember, when W came in 2004, same thing. They actually had a counter protest.
And
remember
that's
that?
and that's to me is crazy. That's something you won't ever see. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to see that from me. I mean, right. I can't control who does what, but I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a single elected official on this planet that I won't take an audience with. I mean, when you refuse to even have a conversation, how effective are you going to be?
Right.
I mean, you literally solve issues with words, with conversations.
Lou Tullio got this, the idea that Lou Tullio didn't have any enemies in Washington. It didn't matter if it was Nixon or if it was LBJ. He was going to make sure money was coming into Erie,
And I mean, whether you agree with maybe his philosophies or not, but look around at the prosperity of that era. And granted, government was structured much different back
Very
then.
Much so,
the flow of money was different. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you're here to represent the people, and I think that's an embarrassment. I mean, why would you want, these people can steer funds, they can steer benefits, they can steer prosperity, they can steer programming. Yeah. I mean, that makes zero sense to me, and I mean, that comes down to being that gentleman statesman. You might not like the words, but I mean, you'll see that you learn hard lessons when you have the burden of command or the burden of leadership. You learn these hard lessons.
Do you think that a Trump 2.0 is going to be, all in all, more beneficial for counties like Erie?
I mean, I can't say, but I can tell you one thing. I mean, I just put it into perspective of what I know holding this office. I mean, in the event that you were to lose an election and have to come back for a third term separated, I mean, you are going to be absolutely lethal and dialed in on day one. I mean, you know how that aircraft flies. You know how it operates.
The ship of state.
And the other thing, I mean, even the things that President Trump-elect has now talked about, or President Trump has talked about, on how early on he took political advice that maybe he wouldn't have taken a second time. Well, I've found myself in very similar shoes in the last 3 years. So, I mean, I see a lot of different parallels, and in how offices function. I mean, I've seen a lot with the Biden administration and comments that they've made. I think at the end of the day, Democrat or Republican, you all want the same things. Maybe the journey looks different or the destination looks different. But at the end of the day, how do you get something done? And in county government, it's not as polarized as folks would let you to be. And there surely are polarizing issues. But
Sure.
At the end of the day, I mean, like we've said 100 times, I mean, it's delivering social services. I mean, you don't ask a Democrat or a Republican, when you call 911, are you Democrat or you Republican? Unfortunately, I mean, there was that instance in FEMA where that
That's
that
nuts, isn't
staffer.
it?
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean that should be punishable by prison. You know, I mean, you're talking about denying services based on political ideology, but I mean, that just goes to show how far down into the gutter our country has come. So, I mean, will we turn a page here? And I think it's up to us at a local level to be that leader and to be that shining light to say, hey, look, we reject these narratives. I mean, you have the Jasmine Floreses and the folks, you know, making their little epitaphs and all the different things that they've done. That's 100% the wrong answer. You know, when we should be condemning this kind of speech, we should be condemning that kind of behavior and really set these things aside and say, look, we have more in common than we have not. You know, and I mean, that's really where I focus my energies.
Let's get another phone call. They're busy today. You're on line with Talk Erie and Brenton Davis, the county executive.
Hey, what's up, guys? That's funny that you mentioned Flores. That's why I was calling. Has there been any anyone calling for her resignation or?
Well, again,
what's
that's
going on?
that's city council, and again, I mean, everybody has an opinion, but yeah. Did you want to weigh in, or yeah?
Well, I mean, to me, I can definitively say that I haven't seen. I mean, I find it odd. I mean, you've got a mayor that ran solely on ending racism as a goal, not a peep. You know, that's not leadership. You've got county council Horton, chair of this previous election failure, that consistently talks about racism. When members of their own party speak out, they condone it as free speech. I mean, to me, that's if a member of my party went off and made a racial tirade like this, I mean, at least here locally, I'm not here to police the entire nation and take accountability for an entire party. But you better believe if one of my colleagues stepped wildly outside and made comments like this, you would have to condemn that. And I mean, that is how you make a difference in your community.
Thanks for the call, caller. Appreciate it. Bye bye. I've got to go to break. Brenton Davis is our guest here on a Tuesday edition of the Joel Natale Show. County Executive is with us, Brenton Davis, here on a Tuesday edition of our program. And County Executive, the phones have been kind of hot, so I'll invite more to come in. 814-679-1080. There was a public hearing, and you did like a series of conversations around the county about the county budget. What was the vibe from all that?
So we did. I mean, to me, I think I just noticed that everybody kind of has their own personal issues that I think that they embody as important to them, and it varies. I think the one thing I noted most is out of a nearly $600 million budget, you don't get a whole lot of questions about the meat and potatoes of the actual budget.
Yeah, like OCY or HHS.
And they don't. And ironically, I mean, that's
a huge chunk.
That's the hugest, the largest chunk. It's like you think of Thanksgiving dinner and, there's turkey and yams and potatoes and all this stuff on the table. And somebody's like, did those breadcrumbs fall off that table? What about those breadcrumbs? And it's not that money's, right. I don't want to equate and make light of, taxpayer funds because they're not breadcrumbs. Every dollar is important. But,
right.
At the end of the day, sometimes it's not even issues that have anything to do with the budget. It's some folks just want an audience with the county executive to just say whatever they want to say,
Sure.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
But you didn't do this last year, right? Did you?
No.
I mean, this was
just something
unprecedented.
This is just something new.
Yeah.
It's something I thought I'd give a try. I wanted.
Were people receiving because you have this kind of checklist of what the major elements of the budget are all about, right? Were they able to understand and receive that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people were just mostly appreciative. They're like, hey, we've never seen a county executive south of I-90. We've never seen a county executive in our borough chambers or our township chambers. And, just being willing to stand there on business and say, this is what I'm proposing and why. This is why this is important to you. This is why this is important to your kids and your grandkids. This is the direction of our community. I mean, you look at what happened in this last election here last week. I mean, this is a mandate on the electorate. It's the stuff that we've been saying all along where folks are like, hey, I'm a little bit of a firebrand. Well, I hate to say it, but it comes to look like that the direction we've been moving is the direction the electorate has been saying we should be going and have been going for the last couple of years. They want to see prosperity. They want to see a mandate on status quo. They want to see people challenge business as usual. They're tired of watching their taxpayer money get spent unnecessarily. The cutting of these 74 positions that we don't need. I mean, that's the things that folks are saying. Like, man, it's hard enough for me to make it as it is. So why fund stuff that we don't need, or why fund things that aren't working, or why fund things that don't give us a return on investment? Why are you spending $400,000 or whatever on a human relations commission that hasn't served anybody for the last 10 months? And then you try to build a case for it.
Well, can I ask you about that? Why is that so stymied, the HRC?
I mean, are you asking why it simply hasn't worked in 20 years?
Well, but I mean,
what is your question?
Well, this is supposedly a very important bulwark to keeping, keeping things, accessible, and that there would be access, that there would be.
I mean, to me, I would just call BS
equality.
Because the simple thing of matter is, if it was truly that important, where are all the cases now? Where are all the cases been for the last 20 years? And I mean, if you haven't been able to do this correctly for the last nearly 2 decades, what makes you think it's going to get it right? I mean, imagine sending your kid to college that's came home with Fs for 20 years straight. How many more years are you going to open your wallet and pay for this? I mean, I know most parents at home might give a kid a semester or two. Okay, now this one's on you. But I mean, this is what you're expecting the taxpayers to pay for. We're not here.
So by eliminating the HRC or mothballing it, does that open up the county to any kind of liability?
No. See, because
lawsuits.
Because here's the thing. One, you got to remember, this is above and beyond, and this is a duplication of services because the state already provides this service.
Okay.
Number one, some are going to argue, well, it doesn't support these certain groups. Well, okay, my argument is why in the heck do you have to? I mean, the data doesn't even support. We don't have enough cases. I mean, if you haven't had it for almost the last year, you can't tell me it's a detrimental service. You haven't had it the last year anyway. But even in the era of compromise, I mean, I've discussed with members of council, you've got 2 attorneys. The whole guise behind this is that you hired one attorney to replace the other when they retired. Now here we are 3 years later, said attorney still hasn't retired, and now taxpayers have paid for 2 attorneys. I only have, essentially 1 county solicitor and assistant for the entire county government. And council has 2 attorneys, one who's Lord knows where he's at. And then the other one getting as much trouble as some of the council members. But at the end of the day, you have very minimal cases. So why on earth, if you really want to do a human relations function, you've got 2 attorneys on retainer. So why not provide the services? It would be less expensive to hire a dang attorney for each of the maybe 10 cases that come up, because sometimes it might just be a simple phone call to a landlord advocating for these people or whatever it is. I mean, at the end of the day, is it about holding kangaroo court, or is it about solving the problems for people in places where it really matters? And that to me is like I'm saying, you don't need this. So, I mean, I'm saying...
I probably, again, the play devil's advocate, it's probably a concern about losing access.
But, I mean, to me, here's the thing. They've already lost access for the last year because we haven't had it because it was poorly managed. It's been poorly managed, and it hasn't worked for 20 years. 20 years. It's never worked. It has never worked. So how many more times do you have to put the taxpayers on the hook for nearly $500,000 for something that doesn't work? I mean, the taxpayers deserve a watchdog, and here I am, and they don't like it, number one, but I'm willing to compromise. If you say this is truly an inherently needed service, then have your attorneys provide it because they're already on staff, and then take it on an as-needed basis.
Right.
I mean, let's just say, okay, if you have 10 cases a year, and each one even say you hire an attorney for $4,000 or $5,000, that's only $50,000. That's not $500. So why are we paying to staff an office and put a full staff and have an executive director and folks that have absolutely no background in any of this? I'll tell you why. Because it's Erie doing more Erie stuff. They've got somebody already picked out, just like they do on these boards, authorities, and commissions. Somebody sitting somewhere in political power has a crony that they want to pay an exorbitant amount of money to do next to nothing.
County Executive is our guest here. It's 4:30, time for news on Talk Erie. Having the crucial conversations that Erie needs. It's the Joel and Natalie Show on Talk Erie here at 105.9 WZTE. We're live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State. Our phone number, 814-679-1080. The county executives with us from Erie County, Brenton Davis. And, Brent, we're still kind of dealing with this election, right? I mean, there's going to be some blowback over the mail-in ballots in Erie County.
Well, you look no further than our incumbent U.S. senator that refused to concede an election, despite it's mathematically impossible. Mm-hmm. We've still got members of each party, or at least I saw the Democrat chair still standing there in the window hoping for magical ballots to fall out of the sky. This just goes a testament to show, like, it's time to return to normalcy. This mail-in ballot stuff, maybe it worked for COVID, but is this really the direction our country needs to go? I think we need to, I think both sides now have gotten a taste of the consequences of mail-in ballot. Erie County unfortunately led the way on that debacle, on a national stage. So, what happens now moving forward? I think we need to take reaffirming steps for voter identification, for maybe moving away from mail-in ballots and getting back to the tried and true methods that can be verified, that we can verify and count the same day.
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Let me pivot back to the budget. And one of the things that really occurred to me at your budget address and when you released the budget back on October 1st is there is a paradigm shift that's going on when it comes to what to do with the county's portion of gaming revenue, as well as how to deal with like grant, putting out the grants. Because I think when in your first year, when we first started talking about this, you were saying that some organizations were like double dipping. They were in the budget, or they wanted to be in the budget, but they also got grants or something. Can you explain all that to me?
I can give you even a better example. Yeah. I was just at the Anchor building with ECRA today out in Girard. And you've got GCAC that got $50,000 as an Anchor building. Okay. They're in my budget for the county's portion of gaming revenue over $1 million every year, on top of all the other programming and funding that they're given. So why on earth are they getting a bite of the apple at ECRA? It's the same exact thing. You sit there and see, like, different programs, different priorities. It's the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. It's another reason why this system is broken. Another example would be a particular entity that owed ECRA money. The DEI commission decides, hey, let's give them a little bit of funding. It's when you create all these different little echo chambers and dilute the taxpayer money. You're taking every step that you dilute this, you're one step further away from accountability. True and inherent accountability, because none of those people that allocate money are accountable to the electorate. Not a single one of them. And you can say, oh, well, an elected official appoints them and this, that, and the other. I can tell you right now, not a single one of these members of these boards, authorities, and commissions give two craps about your vote. They don't care because they have no consequence of doing the right thing. So there's more politics as opposed to less.
Yeah, but that's kind of like painting all, these volunteers that sit on a commission of the parking authority with pretty broad brush, don't you think?
Yeah, but the parking authority doesn't allocate funding the last time I checked. You look at like grant-making organizations.
Okay, yeah.
You've realistically got essentially three of them. RDA gives some grants, or at least received a grant. You got ECRA, you got the DEI commission, and I can tell you where the vast majority of the conflict comes from. It's things like this. Why on earth, when you look at folks that stand to make out pretty well, say in the county budget based on contracts, they're already making money on the taxpayers through maybe DHS funding or other funding or maybe grant funding, then why on earth are you getting 2 and 3 bites of the apple? Or turning out to the DEI commission, turning out to the county for county gaming grants, turning out to ECRA for their you get 3 bites of the apple.
Yeah.
That makes absolutely no sense. And
isn't the DHS money for specific programming, for example. So they can't use it, let's say, if they need a new HVAC
Well, that's
machine.
that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
So, I mean, so there are DHS funds that can do different functions.
All right.
So say, for instance, we utilize DHS funding to revamp a space outside the Mental Health Association. And you see all these folks that some of them appear to be unhoused, but a lot of them have housing. But, it gives the community a certain look downtown that say, hey, look, we're looking to kind of give these folks a warm, dry place to go where they can enjoy the sun, but they're out from standing in the streets and laying on, benches and, flower beds and things of that nature. So, I mean, there are a lot of different benefits. There are a lot of different grants that say RCAPs and things of that nature. We're at the center of a lot of that in county government. So, I mean, to really direct taxpayer money as intelligently and as effectively and efficiently as possible when you have these other organizations that just willy-nilly 7 members decide, well, this is a good idea, that have absolutely no background or no intelligence, and I don't mean intelligence in terms of intelligence, but I mean like information, no information to really guide those decisions. They don't see the data. They don't see and then where's the return on investment?
But isn't that rely on the executive directors of these commissions, or?
Well, then therein lies another problem. So, I mean, who's really running the show? I mean, that's a question I'd like to ask. Do the executive directors of these authorities, I mean, they're supposed to be administrative arms, not decision makers. So if you're at the point where you have authorities that have executive directors that are essentially the tail wagging the dog, is it really a collective body that makes the decision? Or is it a person predisposing, hey, it's like getting a kid. Do you want peas or do you want carrots? You still eat a vegetable. So I mean, to me, if that's the case, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. If it's the will of the electorate, it's a 7-member board. But if you're telling me, hey, it's the executive director that's guiding it, now we have a problem.
I don't know if you have a problem.
Now, that's absolutely a problem. So then why have a board?
Well, I mean, the board does advise and consent, right? I mean, let's look at. I mean, when you're talking about economic development, I mean, which is one of your favorite things, we do have an economic development agency. It's called the Erie County Redevelopment Authority, right?
We do.
And so, and they have a budget and they have a loan fund and all of these things. For example, their issue, honestly, is they don't really have, a funding source. They have to create their own funding in order to operate their front office.
Well, to a degree, but that board also makes the day-to-day decisions. I mean, and all 5 members are appointed by the county executive, and they're there to move the football in the direction that sets the agenda that's set by the executive. That's why that exists like it does. And different authorities, different commissions operate differently. But again, I mean, at the end of the day, what we see, and when I say Erie is doing Erie stuff, you look at the Port Authority, you look at all these different authorities that kind of put the who's who and the crony of this and the crony. It's not hard to play the 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon with who's who in this town. I mean, that's the way a lot of this comes down to it. But the boards, that's where supposedly the political accountability is.
Right.
But, I mean, you can't have that with a part-time board. I hate to tell you, it doesn't work. So, I mean, you look at other counties that are far more successful with their infrastructure investments, they keep it all right in-house. Why? Because one hand knows what the other hand's doing. You got 3 commissioners of the county government that allocate these funds, and they do it intelligently with a return on investment and without the overhead. So I mean, in our case, $600,000 a year at ECRA, you could drive that back into projects. Why shouldn't that go to the community? And why shouldn't you see that leveraged out 4 and 5 times like we've shown with the municipal gap funds? Not one single dollar of that goes into administration. Every single dollar of that through the county's program went to the people where it belongs, keeping their taxes low.
Right. And again, like we've talked about before, the reason why they went the ECRA way was because back 20 years ago, the county was a black hole.
Well, that was political infighting. I mean, what it is, this has always been a struggle and a balance of power, But when you sit there and look at it, I mean, when taxpayers, if they go on ECRA's website and you look at other disclosures, you look at $20 million or $15 million, whatever the total is, in loans. Why are we loaning money to places like State College and Wilkes-Barre and, to banks that are housed in New York City and New Jersey? I mean, explain to me how our county casino gaming revenue money that was meant to lower our taxes is funding businesses in other counties and potentially other states. Figure that out, and it's right on the website. Other disclosures, go to ECRA's website, scroll down and look at the loans. Look where they're going. 1855 Capital. You look at Bridgeway Capital. When I, as the county executive, ask, where's this money? Where are these loans? And Bridgeway tells you to pound salt because your contract's not with us? Yeah, and you wonder why we have a problem with that. Yeah. I mean, that to me is alarming, and taxpayers need to know the answers. This is Erie doing Erie stuff and nobody telling the story. And it's kind of like the mandate of the electorate, like Trump. Trump came in telling people what they didn't want to hear. They didn't want to believe it. Well, now who's right in the end? And I mean, you just saw the red wave that came because people are tired of this kind of stuff. And that's why, I know that's why I catch the guff that I do. It's because people don't want to hear the truth, and they also don't want you to shine light into the dark.
Got about 7 minutes left with the county executive. Where do you see your budget going? And again, you were able to kind of hold off on any kind of tax increase. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So there's no tax increase. Again, like I said, folks, these are the laws of math and economics. I proposed a 0.85 tax increase last year, and council cut that to 0.6. Well, it's based on math. You know what your costs are going to go up. You know what you need. You know what your revenues are. Nobody likes to raise taxes. I sure as hell don't like to do it. But I can tell you when I do it, it's necessary because it's math. You can look at the projections and what 4% is, wage increases, the things of that nature, and which is why, again, they weren't willing to make the cuts last year. You remember they weren't willing to make the cuts, so I had to raise taxes. Like, there's only one of two things that you can do, and government can only get revenue by raising taxes, looking at opportunities to leverage casino gaming revenue money to offset infrastructure, but that benefits more townships than it does our county government. But you know what? That's me fighting for my residents. Left pocket, right pocket, it's still the same pair of pants. If I can keep your sewer bills low and water bills and all these different projects from costing you money, I'm saving you money. I necessarily can't do it with wage increases based on 8, 9, 10 different union contracts and addendums and those things. That 4% is 4% is 4%. So 145 million times 4% that goes up every year. These are firm fixed costs that no matter how much of a mathematical or financial genius you are, unless you eliminate people, you can't change that number, which led us to the situation that we're in right now.
Talk about there were some news reports about ARP money. Do we have it all tranched out?
So it's all allocated in this budget proposal.
Okay,
it's all allocated.
So we're not going to miss any deadlines that way.
So no, it's all in the hands of council. If they want to play tomfoolery like we fully expect them that they're going to, if they come in and want to propose new ARP ideas, keep in mind. So tomorrow, we have the Community Resilience Center, which is turn in work release. This will be the first time in Erie County history that not a single individual is going to have to sleep in the streets only by choice. We have enough beds for every single homeless person in Erie County for the first time in history because we took this money, we took a plan. Last year, Andre Horton willy-nilly allocated $1 million to Erie County Care Management without a plan. It took my administration 11 months and 13 days to make this idea happen with a plan that makes any kind of intelligent sense. And we're making it work. We made lemons, we made lemonade out of lemons. And that's the reality. Well, I can tell you, we have until the end of the year to allocate this. So if they don't pass the budget as is, there's absolutely no recourse. So if they want to try to allocate something else, I'm going to 100% veto it because we don't have time to appropriately account for it, contract it, come up with a plan based on data with community stakeholders. And we don't have that runway anymore. We could do that last year, and I showed that we could, and we did. Well, now's the time to double down on the programs at work like Municipal Gap, where we've taken proposed $10.1 million of American Rescue Plan money, and we've leveraged it out to over a $43 million return for taxpayers. That's effectively the greatest tax cut in Erie County history. What does that mean? Just like I was talking to before, it's the water projects, it's the sewer projects where you look out in Green Township for those folks. It was crippling. It was absolutely crippling, and that's why you have these exorbitant sewer bills to pay off the long-term debt. Well, if I can do it at no cost by leveraging grants and providing the local match, we can have nice things and we're paying for it through grants and American Rescue Plan infrastructure money. And that's the 25 to 50 year plan. That's a plan for your kids and your grandkids. That's how you make it affordable to live here, and that's how you keep your taxes low.
So we're not sending any money back.
Well, that's entirely up to council. You know, I mean, if county council doesn't pass this budget as is, you don't have time to allocate new ideas. So you have one of two choices: allocate to the successful
who's having the
programs that
conversations
proposed.
with council? Like, the
conversation happened October 1st when I sent the budget down.
Right.
I mean, it's up to them to deliberate. I mean, they need to understand the rules of the U.S. Treasury. I don't make these federal guidelines. Yeah. You know, the goalposts are there. Like when your shoulder's up against the wall, like you've got to perform here.
But do you have anybody on your staff? I mean, your director of finance, or are they having these discussions so they understand the gravity 100%. Of the situation?
So we've already had our internal, but before the budget even went down. I mean, I had DHS discussions, we've had ARPA discussions, we've had this. I mean, these folks have been educated until they're blue in the face. Now, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. We all know the old adage. I mean, what members of council do, that's entirely up to them. I would say any person that has any relative common sense, when you can say, give me $10 million and I'll give you $43 million in return, that's a no-brainer. That's what the municipal gap fund. And keep in mind, that wasn't necessarily my idea. That was a pre-existing idea of the previous council that I tweaked. You know, essentially we threw gas on the fire, supercharged that program, and made it something that it never was intended to be.
Well, and I would think, I mean, just, hypothetical here is that, you know, if you had a gap project with ARP money in Harbor Creek, I would imagine the supervisors like it, and Chris Drexel would listen to the supervisors if he doesn't listen to you and say, hey, this is probably a good idea.
Well, and I mean, here's the thing. I mean, oftentimes folks don't follow the path of logic. You know, I mean, that's entirely up to them whether they will or they won't. You know, I mean, I think the residents of Northeast and Green Township and all these places need to be watching Councilman Drexel. They need to be watching Terry Scatella if they live in Mill Creek. I mean, because if not, I mean, these are looming bills into the millions and millions of dollars that are coming your way under DEP mandates in the future for particularly sewer projects.
Yeah.
And you're going to be stuck carrying the full bag. I'm telling you right now, with my plan, I have a plan to pay for it, you know, where it really wouldn't cost either nothing or next to nothing in the future for a lot of these projects. We've already done one out in Northeast for $3.2 million. No cost to the local taxpayer. We covered all the local costs with ARPA money. And we got grants and other things. I mean, where have you ever heard that happen in Erie County? Just go talk to people in Green Township like myself, where I sold every investment I had out there because it was so exorbitant to stay there. So, I mean, you sit there and look at these things, you know, how any council member could look at their own constituency and say, you know what? Nope, I choose politics over the betterment of my community. I want you to pay more. I mean, that's essentially what a no vote for this budget's going to be. But I'm going to sit here and tell you right now, as sure as the sun's going to rise tomorrow, there's going to be folks that do that. And I think the two most poised to do that are going to be Drexel and Scatella.
But that's shocking because you didn't mention the city guys.
Listen, I'm Babe Ruth calling it over the fence, middle left field.
One last question for the county executive. We got some big chunky money from RCAP this last go around. I mean, that's the project Resolve up at Barron there. That's pretty.
So I mean, that's huge. I mean,
stuff.
When we talked to Dr. Ford, you know, 18 months ago, 24 months ago, and I said, hey, how long is this going to take? He's like, 5 to 8, maybe more years. Okay, watch this. And that's we take $5 million American Rescue Plan money I get with President Neely Bendapudi of Penn State and say, look, Erie County's got $5 million, but we're only going to commit it if you match it. And she committed. We doubled $5 million in a 30-minute conversation. You know, that was off to the races. That was first in money, $10 million of the 27 that we needed. And then you advocate, you know, different capital stacks and different RCAPs back to back. You know, this is advocacy from our state reps, Senator Laughlin, you know, all these folks, me going to D.C., pounding the salt to get the vote for Fetterman's $2.5 million because we had to flip 5 U.S. senators to get it. And once they realized it was a Republican issue in an upcoming election and for a Republican executive, we were able to flip 5 votes. You know, and it was questionable at the time. So we got $2.5 million through Senator Fetterman. So I mean, it's a lot of different political jockeying, and again, it comes down to those relationships. You talk about it. So here we are, fully funded with the $6.5 million. That's a relationship with our governor. $6.5 million with the Shapiro administration. This is a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, working together for the betterment of Erie. And I mean, what they said we couldn't do in nearly a decade, we just did in under 2 years. So tell me, what else is possible? That's the challenge that I say to this council. When you do things appropriately, you have a plan, and you have the non-negotiable courage to see it through, and the leadership to get it done, great things happen. This isn't for the weak. This isn't for the apologetic. And to me, at the end of the day, we're going to continue to win. Erie County is going to continue to win, under my administration with the partnership of the elected officials that I have my left and my right of both parties.
Leave it there. County Executive of the County of Erie, Brenton Davis. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. It's 5 in front of 5.